Welcome back, everybody. This is On the Perf, brought to you by Atlas Gunworks. My name is Adam Reiser, and I am still reeling from my catastrophic defeat to my co-host, Adam Maxwell, at the Dissident Arms shotgun match down in Texas. Maxwell, are you still glowing from slaughtering me so badly?
Oh yeah, that's right. I kicked your ass. It was
Yep.
Well, get used to it. I got about 10,000 rounds of 22 downrange, so maybe it's a brand new day.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Well, we got another match. We're both flying to North Carolina in about 3 days here to go shoot Battle for the South. This will come out after that, but we'll see. We'll see. Mr. Maxwell here was. Are you still asking for 12% gap for shooting an AK?
I never asked for 12%. Somebody asked me what kind of gap there should be.
What kind of gap should there be?
I think you need like a +3.
A +3? Okay.
No, you need 3.
I need 3.
Yeah.
Oh. So I just have to beat the spread. Okay. All right. Fair enough. I just have to beat the spread. You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. All I got to do is beat the spread, and we're calling it a W.
just don't mess up. That's all you gotta do.
Just don't mess up. Yeah, I'll do my very best.
I'm gonna stand by an excuse cone though. I'm shooting with the staff. I'm shooting AK division. Flying in from a work thing. I'm not gonna be able to drive. We'll stack them all up there. Yeah, it's gonna be great when I beat you.
Pile up the excuse list. Yep, you have fun with that. Well, we're gonna answer a question that we got
not one
from
but
one
two.
of our listeners. Two. This is going to be a double header. The first question we're going to tackle here is a question from Ben, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the gist is he has a couple quick questions. The first one is, for shooting long-range stuff, do you prefer reloads or factory ammo, and is there a benefit to either? I reload just because I have the equipment to do it, and once you have all the equipment, it is cheaper than buying factory ammo, which is the only reason I do it. If the ammo fairy came to my door and said, shoot all this nice, Hornady match or whatever it was, I would certainly do that instead of reloading. Maxwell, how about you, buddy?
Well, the advantage to shooting factory ammo is it's factory ammo. You can literally buy it. It is, I don't know, pick your flavor of beer, but you buy a cube of Coors Light, you know what you're going to get. All right? It's kind of that thing too. Could you get it better? Yeah, probably. But if you buy decent factory ammunition, it's pretty consistent, and you kind of have I won't say a never-ending supply, but it's definitely a less labor-intensive supply of that ammo loaded to that standard. Pair that with the fact that, unlike Reiser, I have not invested in any of the reloading equipment necessary. Well, not the rifle-specific loading equipment necessary to load match rifle ammunition. I load a metric ton of pistol ammunition. I tried to load rifle ammo one time, figured out why case trimming is a thing early on in my career, and just never went back. I traded the rest of the components I bought to Tanpo Tim for 1,000 9mm bullets and called it good.
Solid plan.
But,
definitely.
Yeah.
Loading rifle ammo is a whole nother thing compared to loading pistol ammo. Literally twice as much work.
Yeah. So, for most of my action shooting career, I have used some combination of Federal Gold Medal, Barnes Match, or Hornady. Those are pretty much the brands I stick to in some rotation. The rotation kind of depends on our relationships in the industry at the time, who needs what for trades and all that stuff. So I use different stuff on the barter system, but usually what I use is what we got, not because I went out and got it specifically.
Yep. And all those are perfectly good options. So short version there. And then the rest of the questions are all about zeroing. And like I said, I'm not going to read the whole thing because we're going to answer all the questions in a hopefully quick zeroing talk. We'll try to get through this one snappy because I don't think it's as complicated as people want to make it. Maxwell's already asleep. Sawn logs over here, so we're gonna make it snappy so we can get to the other fun question. All right. So the basic gist is how to zero. The first thing is you cannot properly zero your rifle until you can shoot a good group with your rifle.
Fact.
If you can only shoot a 3-minute group through a 1-minute rifle, other than minute of berm, you need to learn how to shoot the rifle first. So you need to be able to lay down behind it and shoot more or less to the level of mechanical accuracy that rifle has. How much shooting it takes to zero rifle also depends on how accurate the rifle is. So if you have a rifle that shoots little cloverleaf groups, I feel very comfortable zeroing that rifle with somewhere between 3 and 5 shots in a group and being like, yep, that's in the middle. If your rifle shoots 3-minute groups, you have to shoot a lot of rounds in order to figure out where the center of that group actually is. So more accurate is always better, whether it is the rifle itself or your ability to shoot it. When you zero the rifle, use something super duper stable. Don't lay down and monopod off of a magazine and zero your rifle and walk away and call it good. Put the forearm on a sandbag. I use a bipod with the rear bag full PRS style. I want to get that rifle as stable as I possibly can. I'm going to zero on the highest magnification that I can. Because the crosshairs on a 1-6 are very thick, I actually like to zero on the head box of an IPSC target and quarter it with the crosshairs, because the dot in the middle / the crosshairs are thicker than the group size that my rifle can shoot, which means that if you put the crosshairs over a dot, you can actually have shifting zeros. When you're done zeroing, center your turrets. So when you take your scope caps off, your turret says 0. So if you have to dial for something, then you can. Am I going fast enough for you, Maxwell? I'm hoping you're not asleep yet.
I wanted to pause you a couple times already.
All right, well then go ahead. Step in.
All right, so what he just touched on there is super important, zeroing out your turrets. A lot of people neglect to do that. Few reasons that's important, aside from the obvious. It's a visual indicator that your rifle hasn't been monkeyed with. It has been over 10 years now, but there was some turret spinning gate at some matches. People thought other people spun their zeros. So there's a little visual indicator that your rifle hasn't advertently or inadvertently lost its zero. The other one is if your quote unquote match ammo, your long range ammo, doesn't fly exactly the same as your quote unquote hoser ammo. I do have some rifles that are like this. You can have hard zeros for both, and you can jump back and forth between both without having to shoot the gun. So I'll have the rifle hard zeroed and indexed for 0 on the long range ammo, and then I have a picture in my phone as to what the turrets look like when it's zeroed for the 55 grain ammo on one particular rifle that's up a full mil and left a full mil. Or left 4 full mils, excuse me. So you can jump back and forth between that, especially for our LE folks. That's really big because a lot of times they don't shoot duty ammo in practice. So that's a way to jump back and forth between rifles with different known zeros. The other one that I wanted to jump back to when Adam was talking about shooting a representative group, all right, there are dudes who try to zero their rifle in 3 shots. 3 shots total. Like they will take 1 shot, make an adjustment, take 1 shot, make an adjustment. You can do that kind of crude to get it in the neighborhood, but if you're using your rifle for anything serious, be it competition use, defensive use, duty use, I mean, the people have chased themselves all the way around the map on the variance of their rifle. People have come up to me working for an optics company. People have come up to me with a target and said, well, here's my first shot, and then I made this adjustment and it went over here, and then I made this adjustment over here. They show me like Orion's belt of a constellation of shots, and they're like, what's going on with my scope? And I'm like, well, the problem is that you're not getting a representative group. You're taking an anecdote, if you will, and making an adjustment off that. So you got to shoot at least a 3, if not a 5-shot group to get a representative sample of how your gun is calibrated if you're actually zeroing an unknown rifle. If you're just confirming, yeah, you could probably just take a couple shots, know what's going on. Or if you're getting that first initial group, like if you just mounted a scope onto a gun, you fire 2 shots and you see like, holy crap, they're 4 inches low and 6 inches to the right. Yeah, you can make an adjustment off of that. But when you're like really honing in on trying to get the zero in there, you owe it to yourself to shoot at least 5 shots, I think, in a group so that you get some kind of average heat map of where that rifle is calibrated for that particular group.
Yep, 100%. So once I zero, I reset my turrets to 0. I also, with all of my guns, I will write on the little piece of tape that I'll put on my scope cap, and I will mark the distance and the ammo that I zeroed my gun with. And this is because I have a whole bunch of optics.
I wish I would have started doing that sooner in my life.
Yeah,
I resisted that for a long time, but I wish I would have started doing that.
It's worth it. It looks goofy. I even have a little piece of tape on my pistol where I won't necessarily write down ammo and distance, but I'll literally put a little piece of tape on my red dot because I have enough guns and enough dots that sometimes they end up unzeroed. So any gun that I have that doesn't have tape on the optic is considered suspect. So
tape indicates that it's zeroed or that it's not zeroed?
Tape indicates that it is zeroed.
Oh, I do the opposite.
Yep. I gotcha.
If I have stuff that I know is not zeroed, but I might forget, I throw tape on it, especially because we have a lot of demo guns in my life. So, like, especially in our cage at work, stuff that who knows who messed with it. Like, if I know it's been messed with, I put a piece of tape on it so I confirm it before I take it somewhere where customers will be.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of the same thing as the dry fire, right? Like, whatever your process is, have a process and stick to it, because nothing sucks worse than rolling out to a match with a rifle that turns out not to be zeroed. Now, with the mechanics out of the way, the zeroing strategies, this was a big part of his question. What's, do we run a 36-300, a 25-300, a 50-200, 100? All of these options can work. I know really good shooters that do all of these things. They are all totally fine. There are a couple things to keep in mind while picking the option that is right for you. Thing number 1, if you are running a 2-segment zero, so you're running either like a 36-300 or a 50-200, zero for the long distance, and it will pretty much match the short distance. The inverse is not necessarily correct.
Yeah, because you only get 1 0. Like a lot of those, it's like 36 and 300-ish, or it's 250-ish. It's not bang on 50, bang on 200.
Exactly.
And a lot of folks lose sight of that. You get 1 0.
Yeah.
And then it kind of correlates with another distance.
And so the reason that I say use the far zero is go shoot a group at 36 yards and then look me in the eyes and tell me, yep, that group is perfectly centered exactly at 36 yards and is going to equal 300 yards. You're out of your mind. The amount of dispersion of your group is not enough to start really spreading everything out either vertically or horizontally at 36 yards, or especially 25 yards, to equal anything at 300 yards. You could have a perfect little clover leaf at 25 yards and be like 9 inches to the right at 300.
Yeah, because it's so small. Like, your group is so small, and your reference point to equate to that is so small. I mean, to be able to 0-0, like to get a hard 0 at long range at that close of a distance, you'd have to be measuring the center of the group like down to the, 100th of an inch? Maybe 10th of an inch for sure. Like, you'd have to have your micrometer out, your calipers out, like really figuring out where the center of that group was. It's not, it hasn't been in, it doesn't give you enough data other than to say, yeah, it's kind of heading that direction. For you to take a shot like that.
Yeah. And so the other drawbacks to a near far zero, anything along those lines, is you will have spots where your bullets hit dead on. You will have spots where you hold over, and you'll have spots where you hold under. Now, this is totally fine as long as you practice that way. But for example, I just punched in the ballistics data for one of my JP rifles, and if I am shooting a 300-yard zero at 100 yards, I would hold under 6 inches. So that is holding the bottom edge of a plate rack at 100 yards and barely striking the top edge of the plate rack at 100 yards. So that's fine. You can certainly do that. You just need to be aware that you're going to be holding under a pretty significant amount. So the max point blank zero strategy, which is what both of these things kind of are, is perfectly fine depending on the size of target that you're shooting. So if you need to be minute of man and you're shooting something that's the size of a full-size IPSC at all these distances, that is a perfectly acceptable way to go. If you're shooting much smaller targets, that can work, but you really have to understand where you need to hold at all times. The
point blank meaning the distance in which you could hold center without any correction, just hold center, send the shot, and you would get an acceptable hit on the target. When military talks about max point blank, they're talking about holding center on a human torso and getting some kind of debilitating hit.
Yeah.
We usually in the competition sports are shooting at targets smaller than that.
Correct. So what that means is you just have to really know what your bullet's doing, especially when it goes above your crosshairs. Like I said, this can work totally fine. People do it. It's great. I used to run a 200-yard zero. I switched to a 100-yard zero for a couple reasons. Reason number one is logistically, it was just way easier to find 100 yards to zero my rifle, where finding 200 required me to get in the car and drive quite a ways, where 100 yards I could go to the range I always go to and just do it. The other reason is I didn't like holding under targets, especially if there were no shoots and things like that involved. It's not much fun to hold 4 inches into a no-shoot target when you're trying to shoot, whatever shoot target is above it. So I liked just holding over for everything. So, if I'm shooting close stuff, I'm holding over a bit. If I'm shooting farther stuff, I'm holding over a bit. At 100 yards, I'm holding dead on. And, I shoot good glass with good reticles. It's really easy to understand where all of those holds are. That's like kind of it. Like there's not much to it. Like pick the process you want to use, have reasons for that, and understand the shortcomings of that process, because all of them do have shortcomings, and just pick the one that you like and stick with it. Like people get really wrapped around the axle about it, but like all of these can work just fine. Like super high level shooters use all kinds of different zero strategies, and they all can work.
I think what you have to remember about a lot of these too is that a lot of them came out of government agencies. So a lot of times government agencies are trying to boil something down super simple and get everybody through a qual or a zero or something like that with a minimal amount of time and ammo. So like my perception of where like a 36-yard zero came from or a 25-yard zero came from is because the Army could pretty easily quarantine off a 25-yard area or the 36-yard area and get everybody to shoot. Where like they have the same problem that everybody else has. It's hard to get a big group of people to a 300-yard range and zero at 300, because at the end of the day, a lot of people can't really shoot 300 yards. So it was a lot easier to get kind of nominal shooters through this process with a restricted facility. So that's one thing to keep in mind where a lot of these came from. The other one is like some of the applications are kind of specific. Some of my reference material in military stuff, the 36-yard zero became pretty prevalent from naval special warfare using it. What is their mission? Their mission primarily is to take down ships. And so they wanted to be able to hit max point blank of a CD, which for you kids is this disc that we used to burn music onto. They wanted to be able to hit a CD size target with no hold over or no hold under on the distance, any distance on a ship. And so that is why Naval Special Warfare used that particular zero fairly heavily. When they would go into other theaters of war, Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, they would use other zeros. But like those are kind of mission specific too. So you can't just say like, oh, well, if it's good enough for the SEALs, it's good enough for me. Well, if you're boarding boats, I guess so. So
I want to shoot that match. That match sounds awesome.
I know, right? It's like the Duskin goes to sea or something like that.
Yeah, 100%.
And then I also, before your very eyes, I am changing my mind on this because the last time that Riser talked about this and he made his case for the 100-yard zero, it makes a lot of sense to me. The only reason I'm not using it right now is because the particular scopes that I'm using have BDCs in them, so they're set for 200-yard zeros. Otherwise, in the very near future, I will be trying Riser's system of 100-yard zero and truing to a stage because that's intriguing to me. I also, for a long time, I was going off of the 200-yard zero. For a while, I would get a hard 200-yard zero. When I was still living in Minnesota, I had access to a facility that could get me that. Now it's about an hour and a half in the car to go and confirm at 200 yards. Or I can go use the indoor 50-yard range or 100-yard range at work. Completely sterile environment, and I can get a super hard 50-yard zero. For most people's application, I would say that's good enough because most people aren't going to shoot a carbine beyond 100, 150 yards, so you have a hard zero at the distance that you're working with. When we start to talk about competition shooting, all right, as I'm painfully aware, the match is won and lost in long range. All right, so like where you might be pretty close at 200, pretty close might be good enough, or it might not. And so like when you actually go into an organic environment where you're shooting at a 4 MOA target in an actual environment with wind blowing multiple directions in unknown temperature and humidity conditions, and who knows what kind of improvised shooting position you're going to be in, having a zero at the longer distance probably is more advantageous to your score, taking just a few more variables out of the equation. So I'm kind of back, and Riser and I pretty much agree on these things.
Yeah. So the key thing to understand here is that a zero that gets you in a let's just say a 8-inch circle at 200 yards, while on paper that's good enough. That means that if you have a perfect dead center hold with a perfect wind call, you will clip the edge of the plate. And I want more leeway than that because we're trying to shoot things very fast. So I'm usually not having a very settled in sight picture. I want to have it so if my dot is inside the plate and I press the trigger, I'm going to hit that plate. So if you have that, 4 inches of leeway in either direction and you happen to hold on the edge of the plate where the bullets are getting pushed, now you're off the plate, even though your crosshairs are on the plate. So that's what I'm trying to avoid. Another quick thing is if you are shooting a BDC reticle, you should probably just zero for whatever distance that BDC reticle requires because that's how they're designed. But you can zero at 100 yards and then dial to meet the zero for your BDC reticle if you are shooting a scope where you trust your turrets. So back to shooting nice equipment. If you shoot, 100 yards and you're like, yep, that's a super good 100-yard zero, and you put it into your ballistics calculator and you go, oh, to make that a 200-yard zero, I got to come up 0.6, whatever the number is, and then you dial up 0.6 and slip your turrets to zero. If your equipment is good enough, then I would feel very comfortable calling that a 200-yard zero. If you don't trust your equipment, then sorry, I don't know what to tell you. But that certainly is an option if you need to zero for 200 yards and you don't have 200 yards to zero at.
Yep, and that's one of the things, like when people try to, without getting too far into optics, when people try to justify the price of an optic, right? Like, why does this 1-6 cost $3,000 and that one costs $300? Some of what you get in different varying grades of optical product is repeatability of adjustment. So, like Riser's talking, if you have a hard 0, you dial some amount, say, 10 clicks in a direction. How accurately did it move that calibrated 10 clicks? And then if you dial back, how close to where it started does it return? All right? Everything's kind of okay at doing that, obviously, or it wouldn't be a commercially viable product. But if the details matter, repeatability of adjustments and return is a super big deal, and that's some of what you get in the higher grade products.
Yep. So Ben's other question, he asked a lot about zeroing red dots. So this can mean one of two things. This can mean a primary dot or a secondary dot. So I shoot open division. I have a 45-degree offset. I'm running the Defender as my offset dot right now, and I zero it at 50 yards. I actually zero it standing. I have a tripod with a little bag on it, and I flop it on that, and I just zero it standing because it's a little bit awkward to zero an offset dot from the prone. Certainly can be done, but it's just easier to do it standing. And I zeroed at 50 yards because outside of 50 yards, I'm probably not shooting that offset dot. I'm going to be on to my primary optic at that point. And if I have a 50-yard zero on my offset dot and a 100-yard zero on my main optic, when it comes to very close in shooting, I'm going to have, give or take, like millimeters, the same holdover. So if I have a 8-yard headshot with a no shoot underneath it like that, I'm going to hold in the same place with both of those reticles because they both have a, I'm not going to zero for like 12 yards with my red dot is what I'm saying. So that's the offset red dot zeroing strategy that I use. Some people zero super close. Josh Freilich zeros at like 12 or 15 yards, so he can just kind of like run a dead hold on that stuff. And then I know other people that will also zero the red dot at 100. Again, all of those are totally fine. Maxwell, you shot a grip of limited. Where did you zero your primary when it was just a red dot or a 1x prism scope?
I do the same thing that I do now, in that I zero at the distance that I want to be zero. A hard zero at whatever distance I was going for. So at that time, I was still trying to get a 200-yard zero when I was shooting limited. Right now, I'm zeroing red dots at 50, so I'm trying to put them on the same zero plan that my primary optic is on. That way, I don't have two hold over, hold under plans to know. So they're relatively similar. And then I also try to sight the dot in for a 6 o'clock hold. So I'm actually trying to sight in the dot so that the bottom radius of the bullet hole kisses the top radius of the red dot circle. So that most of the time, for most of the shooting you're going to do with a red dot, you point and click right in the middle, no problem. But if it comes time that you got to do something precise with a dot, not only is it minute of dot, it is the top edge of the dot is where the bullet is going to be. Or you have some reference, 3 MOA, 6 MOA, whatever your red dot is, for some kind of hold over, hold under. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, I'm doing exactly like Riser's doing, except I'm just zeroing. I always zero red dots for a 6 o'clock hold on pistols, on rifles, on shotguns. That's generally what I'm trying to do if I can, or near as possible. Given the choice, I would try to get it there. I did play around with some of the intermediate range zeros, kind of like Riser alluded to that Freilich. At least he did at one time. I'm not sure if he's still doing that.
Yeah, he might not. Not sure.
But the thing you got to remember about those is you're kind of painting yourself into a box, because if you're zeroing for those really close distances, that means you're zeroed for a very extreme point on the arc of the bullet. You know, it's still rising very quickly at, say, 12 yards. Okay, so you're going to have a sweet 12-yard zero, but pretty quickly it's not really going to make a whole lot
of sense. At like 20, it's going to be way high.
Yeah, and that that scared me off of it almost immediately. It's just like, it's way too much going on. It's way too complicated. And then it's very specific. I mean, what if you the reason that most people use the dots and the scopes in one stage is because they have the scope zoomed up for something. Well, what if that kind of close thing that you want to hit with your red dot isn't at 15.5 yards? All right. Well, so it's just easier to know one reference point for your trajectory. So I try to pair them both very similarly.
Yep. Cool. We made it. Look at that. I think that only took us like a half hour to rip through zeroing strategies.
Yep.
Yay.
I mean, I think it's, to me, zeroing, especially when people use the term confirming zero, I put that in the same category as doubles. Okay? I think it's kind of a ballistic masturbation safety blanket. Like, it's something people understand, makes them feel good. You can shoot and kind of get some success. You're not going to grow, though. I think people spend way too much time. Like, get a good zero. By all means, do exactly what Riser said. Get a bang-on zero, and then move on. But, like, I've been to multiple-day carbine classes that you paid, like, several $100s to be at. Dudes spent an entire day messing around with zeros. An entire day. And it's like, dude, get that thing zeroed and leave it alone, or
also,
huck that thing in the dumpster and get something else, like.
Yeah, as somebody who has taught a lot of carbine classes and 3-gun classes, for God's sakes, show up with a zeroed gun that you can just pull out of the bag and shoot.
Yeah.
You paid money to be there. Don't waste the time that you spent doing something that you could have done at the range. Yeah. The amount of time that people waste, like those classes aren't cheap, man. What are you doing?
Been teaching for several years now in the professional sector with agencies. Just this week, had my first agency where everybody showed up with something. Everything was zeroed.
What?
Yeah, like,
good for them.
Every time I was like, it's like, all right, guys, I know, but like, we're going to check because there's always somebody. And there usually is. This week, after 5 to 7 years of doing it professionally, first time that and it was the biggest group I've ever done. Well, second biggest group I've ever done. That they all showed up. 40 dudes all had stuff zeroed and ready to go. It was amazing.
Nice. Good on them.
But yeah, it's kind of like I say, the analogy holds, but like guys at the top level, I mean, Riser and I are both going to confirm our zeros.
You just said it. You just said the word.
Yep. We're going to check zeros before we leave, but it's absolutely a safety blanket. Do we expect that anything has changed? No. But we're putting it to rest in our mind that, okay, all is normal here. At the top level, that's worth 5 rounds.
Yep.
But I think a lot of people spend way too much time messing around. I mean, people show up to matches, they spend 30 minutes to an hour on walkthrough day over at the zero range, like messing around with their stuff. They show up to a match with stuff that's not zeroed. If you're not in the industry, there is like no excuse to show up to a match with stuff that's not zeroed. In the industry, sometimes you're kind of given stuff to show up with. So
yeah, that definitely does happen.
But
yeah. I'm going to show up to North Carolina kind of a mess because I had to rip apart my entire rifle and throw all the parts in the sonic cleaner. So like gas system off, the whole deal. So
good thing I'm giving you 3%.
It is, yeah. Good thing I get 3%. But you know what? I'm going to show up with as close to zeroed as I can. I'm going to shoot a few rounds. I'm going to adjust. I'm going to shoot a few rounds. I'm going to adjust. Then I'm going to confirm it. I'm going to be done. It's going to take me like 10 shots to get all this finished.
Yep.
Because I know what I'm doing. All right, on to the fun stuff. Mr. Maxwell here has a question from somebody via email.
Listener question.
You want to kick that off, buddy?
Someone emailed in to us at ontheperfpodcast@gmail.com. If you have questions you want us to talk about, shoot them over there, ontheperfpodcast@gmail.com. This one, he specifically wanted to know about Riser flying with open gear, which is ironic on a couple levels because A, Riser hasn't flown with very much gear compared to me. Riser's usually a driving guy. And B, this person has completely forgotten that I ever shot open. actually, I've done that quite a bit too. But he wanted to know, how do you fly to a 3-gun match with open gear, which is completely legit because, God, it's a lot of stuff. It can be. It can be.
There's a lot of faff. So for the record, I have never flown to a match with open gear. This Wednesday will be the first, or Thursday. Yeah, this Thursday will be the first time I ever do it. Now,
and he's going to light a gun.
And I'm going to be light a gun. I have flown to a lot of matches. I had some pretty heavy travel times between like 2016 and 2019. For most of those, I was also flying with a manufacturer that I was working for at the time. So my stuff was piled in with all of the shop stuff, and it was a big mess.
Pause.
Go ahead.
So how many downloads do we usually get on an episode?
I don't know. I haven't looked for a while.
All right.
I haven't looked for a while. I'm not sure.
If we get to 5,000 downloads, Adam Riser is going to tell his TSA story. Flying professionally. If you want to hear Riser's spicy TSA story.
What you can hear why I no longer qualify for TSA pre-check. It is off the table permanently. So everyone's like, you should get pre-check. I'm like, I can't. The government won't let me.
So
all right.
Share the show with your friends. Spread it around. If we get to 5,000, it's going to be story time with Riser.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. That'll involve a lot of whiskey. I got touched in the bad place. So I think I just killed Maxwell. Anyways, flying with gear. So this is actually like pretty topical because I am going through the process of like figuring out how I'm going to do it right now. And you know me, I'm a very anal retentive, super organized, checklisty, everything has to be perfect kind of guy. So I've put a lot of thought into this, and I have this match that I'm going to be light a shotgun because it's a 2-gun match instead of a 3-gun match. But I have packed up the case with all 3 guns, taken a photo of where everything fits, weighed it to make sure I make weight, all the stuff. So
I would love to watch a time lapse of you figuring all this out in your basement. Just like,
yeah, I should figure out how to do time lapse stuff, and I think it'd be interesting. So I ended up pulling off of the prize table down at PCSL 2-Gun Nationals one of those new Magpul plug and play Lego style rifle cases, and it is sweet. So that case fits my Dissident shotgun, my 16-inch JP rifle with the big scope and an offset dot, and my pistol, and all my pistol mags, and most of my rifle mags, and a couple other little doodads. Everything fits in there. Everything is packed in a very beautiful way, divided by all those little closed cell foam things. Think of like the inside of a ski helmet or a bike helmet or something that's designed to take a lot of impact, and the foam will deform if the impact is significant enough. So something that I would trust quite a bit to not mess up my gear. And I hang it on the scale that I have, and it is 47 pounds with all of that stuff in it, which is
wow,
sweet. And so TSA thing, that case has 2 holes in it for locks. You have to put a lock in every hole that your case has.
Every if that thing intact hole that your case has.
Oh,
Pelican people.
Good move there. Yeah, so if your case has 9 holes for locks, they expect you to show up with 9 locks on there. This case has 2 holes for locks, which is fantastic.
Or you sawzall them all off.
Yeah, it also has wheels. I would call wheels absolutely mandatory for your hard-sided case.
Yeah, let's talk about the cases real quick. So, like Adam said, the new kid on the block, all the cool kids have is a Magpul. I currently don't have one. Other people at the office do. I have sheepishly asked for one. I don't have one yet. I've been using a Boit for years, and I almost want to retire it. I don't know how you get one of these things to the point where it's retired, but some of the latches I need to replace. things like that. So I have a Boit, and then I obviously use a lot of Pelican stuff that I either have access to through work or bought also. And then the other one is SKB. Pre-Magpul, I was probably Team SKB guy because I liked the latches and the handles better on the SKB than any of the other stuff. I feel like Pelican's kind of one of those companies where they're like the standard, so you pay a lot for them. They're kind of the standard by which everybody else is judged, but they've also kind of, maybe we'll put them in the category of Glock. Okay? Glock, super good, not super innovative, all right? Lots of room for people who want a piece of the Glock pie to innovate and try to take market share from them. I would put all the other hard case companies in that category of like everybody wants to be like Pelican or take a piece of the Pelican pie. Pelican is very good, but it leaves some to be desired. I don't currently like the latches that Pelican uses, okay? As much as I like SKB, my SKB cases, I pretty much plan to replace the wheels on them yearly. Now, keep in mind that I travel 20 weeks out of the year. But the bearings and the wheels go bad. I pretty much plan to replace them all the time. The biggest thing I wonder about, and this is my question on the Magpul, and that's where, I don't know if anyone caught my reaction when Riser finally revealed what the weight was on that. The thing is the weight. Is that everybody kind of makes a case that is a similar size. They come in at very different weights, all right? Apples to apples, I can get more stuff in a competitive case to Pelican than a Pelican because the Pelican cases are always heavier. And when you're talking about flying, you're talking about weight. So, Riser, you don't have status, do you? I would assume not. So, Riser, most people are trying to hit the 50-pound weight limit because over that you get charged, and by charged I mean $200. If you have status, like with Delta, everyone's going to be different, but in Delta, once you have medallion status or something like that at a certain level, then you get up to 70 pounds. That's where I'm at. Usually my Pelican case is, or I use that term generically, my gun case is usually hovering around 67.5 pounds, but I also know kind of where the line is, and I stuff a bunch of stuff in it. So the big thing to keep in mind here is not only what can you physically shove in that gun case, but does it make weight, and what weight are you trying to make? You're either trying to make 50 pounds, which is totally doable, but there's no room for error, or 70 pounds, which is more doable, but you still got to be careful.
Yeah. So, so those are the options basically, and then the only real downside to the Magpul case, most people, I would say, what they'll do is they'll take their long guns, they'll put them in their long gun soft case, and then they'll put them in their hard-sided case.
I'm in that category.
Yep. So I would say that's what most people do. So when you have the Magpul version, it is, one of the reasons that is so light is because that soft case isn't in there. Soft cases by themselves, especially if you have, like one of the nicer ones out there, they're pretty heavy and they're pretty bulky. What I actually am doing for this year is I just went to Scheels and I bought the cheapest, like $12 AR soft side rifle case that weighs nothing and will roll up into a little ball. And that's what I'm going to use for my carrying stuff around at a match, at travel matches. They're cheap. They don't weigh anything. I don't care if I destroy them. They'll probably last less than a season. But they'll help me make weight because I can just throw that thing in my other duffel bag that's going to be going with me. So It is something you have to keep in mind if you get the Magpul version.
Yep. So on the other side of the house, what he's talking about is on a long gun case, we basically throw away all the foam, all of it. I have some around if some of you frugal types are really wanting that. But basically gut all the foam out of it, so we just have a hard shell, and then you get a soft case that fits inside. Brownells is the one that I use the most. I don't know if they're currently making it, but the Brownells 3-gun bag is the one that I use the most. Some Safariland stuff. fits in there too, but a soft case. And essentially I put the guns in the soft case and I use that as the padding goes into the hard case. The advantages to that are that once you get there, once you get to your location and you get into your hotel, you can come and go from a location with a soft case instead of the roller, which is a little bit more discreet. Now, most of your gun soft bags still say gun case on them, but it's just a little bit less. I'll remember the first multi-gun nationals I went to for USPSA when it was in Vegas. The match hotel was a casino because all the hotels in Vegas are a casino. But it was a fairly, it was off the strip, but it was a legit like franchise casino that was the match hotel. And so like a certain time of day, there would be a caravan of us jerseyed up, rolling through the casino with all of our gun cases. And all the 70-somethings that had been drinking and playing poker all night were like a little like, what's going on here? So it's less discreet than that. And then the flip side of that too is like working out of a hard case at a match. Like if that's your gun case and you're in and out of that, it's mildly horrible. It's not fun to work out of a hard case, actually shooting the match. So it's kind of nice to have a soft case, for actually while you're there at the match. And you have to weigh that against how you're going to get it there and then, making weight. So, So that's one of my holdups on the Magpul case is like, okay, well, if I do that, how do I operate while at the match?
So tactical.
Yeah, super tactical. But yeah, how do you exist in that environment and manage all of your stuff? Because like, same thing, like doodads and whatnot, like range bag, like having a range bag, flying and not having a range bag. How do you do that? Simple answer would be like, well, you probably have a backpack that you flew with, right? One of my hard and fast rules: there is no gun paraphernalia that goes in the carry-on. Yep. No knives, no guns, no magazines, no ammo, ever, ever.
Well, to drop a little teaser for the potential flying story, if we make 5,000, that is how my story starts. With a thing ended up in a place that it wasn't supposed to be, and I wasn't aware of it, and hilarity ensued. It wasn't funny while it happened. It was only funny a couple of years later.
Yeah, it's only funny now that he didn't go to prison.
While it was happening, super not funny. So the other thing the AMAX just touched on here is the range bag. So for the Dissident match I played around with, I had like a big rolling bag that I used for most of my travel, and then I just had like a 40-liter duffel bag. I really missed having my actual range bag there because especially like it wasn't super bad for the shotgun thing, but especially when you get all the way into 3-gun and open division 3-gun, there is a lot of faff going on. So what I'm doing for this match, and probably all matches moving forward, is my range bag is not a range bag that anybody uses. I have a Eberly stock Phantom sniper pack. And the reason I have that is it is a giant backpack with huge sleeves that can hold tripods. And then it actually has like a giant rifle scabbard thing between the pack and your back. Like the frame of the pack is like the rifle scabbard. And I got that for NRL Hunter Series stuff where you're walking around with bags and tripods and your rifle and your rangefinder and all of your stuff. There's a lot of stuff you carry around for those. And that was the simplest version I could find to help me carry all the things. You can take the rifle scabbard off and the waist belt off and everything else and slim it down to like a nice 60-liter, very sweet backpack. If I was just buying one today and I wasn't doing the NRL Hunter thing, I would get the Eberly stock Upranger pack, which was designed by our buddy Cody Leeper. And it is kind of like, think of it like an armored camera pack where you lay it down with the shoulder straps facing up. And then the back panel is where the access is. So you're not laying your shoulder straps in the dirt, and it's nice and divided, sort of like a camera bag with like an armored bottom on it. It's super sweet. I'm not sponsored by Eberly Stock or anything like that. I just think they make rad stuff. And so that's what I run. And so what I'm going to do for this match, and if it goes well, all other matches, is I'm going to take that 60-liter bag stuffed with all the things I'm going to use for a match, and I'm just going to put the entire thing wholesale into a 90-liter duffel that I have, and then whatever else other stuff that I need for just, like existing on the trip, I'm going to toss into that duffel, and then I'm going to check the duffel whole. And then I'll have like a small carry-on to, take on the plane that has like headphones, electronics, computers, things like that. But that is my plan for travel for this match.
All right. Well, I'm gonna eat a little bit of crow here. I actually, I fly with 2 sets of hard cases. All right. So I have the long gun case, and then I actually have like the luggage size hard case, roller hard case that would be like the size of a big piece of luggage, but it is a hard box. That idea, the first I ever heard of that idea was Josh Freilich. I have to admit I scoffed at it at the time, like, ha, what a poser. You're right, Josh. You were right. I'm sorry. But yeah, my main piece of luggage, whether I'm going to a match or not, like my main piece of luggage is a big roller hard case. It's an SKB. It's just easier to say Pelican sometimes, but like, it's a big piece of luggage like that. So a lot of times, if it's my only piece of luggage, I can throw 2 locks on it and I can carry a handgun in there or whatever. For a match, though, usually what I do is I pack one of those, and then inside of that, I used to just kind of throw it all in there as like a big casserole. And I've wrecked a lot of clothes that way. So now I actually use packing cubes. So Vertex, not Vortex, Vertex, Vertx, the apparel pack, soft goods company, they make, I think it's a VTAC series, but Kyle Lamb came out with kind of like a packing cube series. And so I use a combination of the Vertex packing cubes. They're a little bit thicker, heavier duty material than a normal packing cube would be, because they're kind of intended for people like us and not ladies. So they're a little bit more gear oriented. They have a little bit of dividers in there and stuff like that. And so I can get 3 of those in there in addition to all my other stuff, but one of them kind of has all my, I call it kind of my trinkets one. So that's the one that's got the rangefinder in it. It's got the battery packs in it, or the case with extra batteries in it. Gloves, a Leatherman or whatever, like my random stuff, tools is in one. Because I'm in the industry, I also fly with tools. So I have a couple of Real Avid kits that actually have like torque wrenches and optic like tools in them. Don't leave home without them. And then the other one I pack full of magazines. So it has rifle magazines, pistol magazines, all the magazines that I'll need for the match. So that's 3 things kind of stacked together. They also have a lot of the sharps and the dirties in them so that they don't wreck my clothes. And then have a couple other ones for other random stuff. And then I'll put my belt kind of in the top of that case, pack my clothes around it. And so I have kind of a hard bottom that has these packing cubes in it with all the gear in it. Have my clothes and my belt in it, my shoes, and I close that whole thing together. And then where I'm going with this is once I get to the location and I get to the hotel, I unpack all my clothes and all my personal stuff out of there, so it's just equipment, and then that piece of luggage goes back into the car, and I essentially have a big Pelican box to work out of. And that's what I've had the best luck with, is something like that. At pistol matches, I'll actually bring a smaller Pelican case.
Do you roll with that whole case from bay to bay? Like, so assuming that you're not in a match where you can work out of your car, do you roll with that whole thing bay to bay?
No, most of the ones that I would travel to like this, you can at least get close in the car. If you have to go bay to bay, I'm almost leaning on I'm leaning on the stuff in all the pockets of the long gun soft case that I brought.
Yep.
And making do from there. But usually you can kind of, with the amount of magazines I bring, you can kind of get a few stages worth in there, and then sneak over and do what you got to do, and then come back and resupply. Usually I'm in some quandary where that works, or like at a big pistol match, like Western States or Factory Gun Nationals, Race Gun Nationals, something like that. I'll actually bring like the smaller Pelican case that is overhead compartment sized, and I'll use that. That's kind of range bag size, and I just bring. I will literally carry that stage to stage, but I do not carry it on the plane.
Yep. Cool. So I make a few concessions when I'm traveling. I'll ship my ammo ahead of time. So I shipped most of my ammo. The only thing I'm flying with is a few hundred rounds of pistol ammo, because all the loaded 9mm I had at the time was lead-coated bullets. And for this match, Atlas was nice enough to send me an Erebus to shoot, which, damn, that thing is not messing around. So I'm super psyched to take that, but I didn't have any jacketed bullets loaded in the amount of time when I ship my ammo, so I'm going to fly with my pistol ammo. When you're flying with ammo, it has to be in a quote factory container. I just use, like Barry's boxes, whatever, like blue little ammo boxes that you have. Those work fine. You can have them in any of your bags. It doesn't need to be, locked or separate or anything like that. It certainly can't be loaded in your gun. But there is an 11-pound limit on ammo, which sounds like a lot and super isn't a lot. That's about 300 rounds of pistol ammo. It's only 11 pounds if they actually pull it out and they weigh it. But be aware that there is an 11-pound limit. If you are asked, you have 10.5 pounds of ammo in there. And if they weigh it, just understand that you're going to lose some.
I have never met the lowly TSA or gate agent that was paid enough to care to weigh the ammo. Okay. I have never been verified being over the weight limit. What they're looking for is they're looking for them to either be in factory original container, so that's a saving grace there. If it's the original box, you're good. Or they want it in the individual, like each cartridge is in its little individual holder, and it's snapped shut in some kind of case. Where they'll get you is stuff that is bulk pack. All right, so like even some folks get away with it. I've had horrible luck, but like there's the kind of the hard-sided like bang box things where like you kind of put bulk ammo in this hard-sided Tupperware thing, and they're like, oh, that meets the requirements. My experience has been when that thing they only get interested in ammo when it goes through the X-ray. They can see that it's ammo, and they can see it all jostled up, so it looks like bulk pack. They'll go in and look for it. If when it's in there, it's in a nice, neat, stacked, orderly, like if it's in one of those boxes and it's nice, even orderly rows. If it's in magazines, all right, stacked nice and neat in magazines, that's all they really see is that they're stacked in there neatly. They don't really look at it. But if as you start to like play to the gray area of like some people will be like, well, this can't, they have an original container, but it's bulk pack. All right, so it's like the factory original container, but it's bulk pack. All right, you're kind of gambling there, because maybe they'll be like, oh, okay, it's factory, or they might be like, well, sorry, no, doesn't work that way. If they see it all jostled in there, that's when they start to look at it. And then the other thing, if you're going to fly with loaded magazines, which is completely fine, make sure they're in some kind of thing, like either they're like Magpul mags that have the little snap lids on the top of them, or you have them in some kind of case where like they're not just freeballing in there where like a loose round could pop out, or like a TSA agent would think that a loose round could pop out and magically go off and like crash the plane, which is not what would happen, but that's what they think would happen. So make sure that they're contained.
And don't have your pistol stacked on top of your magazines where when you look at it through an x-ray machine, it looks like that magazine is in the pistol.
Yes, I have a story about that on my YouTube channel. That absolutely happened to me one time. So yeah, try to separate those two things. I think though what gets people about flying with open stuff, because like I was just like Riser in that same Pelican case. I could get a Vepr, a rifle, couple of handguns. Usually would put all the magazines in there. I'd bring 2 20-round sticks and 3 15s. That you can get all that stuff there. Where open gets tricky is when guys want to have the entire toy box with them. They're like, well, I need a bipod. I need 3 kinds of bags. I need what's all the open stuff?
Yeah, tripods.
Tripod, everything. Like all the stuff.
Yep.
And, like, yes, if you're flying, you cannot roll up with a Suburban full of toys. That's
so my gear list flying to this next one, because most of that open FAF is for the rifle. So all of this North Carolina trip is going to have all the FAF. I am going to bring a tripod. I'm not sure which one. I'm going to bring the one that I can make weight with. So I actually have 3 Vortex tripods. I have the Radian, which is the very large, super burly, ultra stable, the one that I love the most. I have I can't remember the name of the newer one that came out.
I'm guessing you're referring to the Switchback.
Yes, the Switchback. So I'm going to try to fly with the Switchback because it is just about as stable as the Radian. I do actually like the longer legs a little bit more. I like the ball head style a lot. But it is, will do all the things that I want it to do. And, there's nothing that it can't do. So I dig that tripod a lot, and it's way lighter than a Radian. And then I think it's the Summit is the super light ones that aren't technically designed for rifles. So I have 2 Summit tripods. My phone is sitting on one of them right now. That's my standard go to the range and film stuff. And then I have the longer leg one, which Vortex will tell you do not use with guns, and I have definitely used it with guns. I will bring that one if I can't make weight. So I will either bring the Switchback or the Summit, and I have a very lightweight like beanbag. I can't for the damn life of me remember the name of the company that makes it, but it comes with like a little aluminum frame, and it clips onto a rail on the front of your rifle. So it doesn't have straps or anything like that. It just clips into place. I can't remember which one it is, but it weighs just about nothing. That is the only bag I'll bring, because I can take it off the little frame and I can use it on the rear for zeroing my rifle on a bipod, and then I can attach it to the little frame and clip it onto the front of my rifle, and I can use that on a stage if I want. And I mount the little frame upside down so I have clearance between my handguard and the bag so I can hold my rifle where I normally do, because I don't want to hold my rifle in some goofy configuration. And then I just have like a standard height Harris bipod, doesn't weigh a whole lot. So like that's my like open division FAF kit. 1 bipod, 1 bag that I can put on the front of my rifle, 1 tripod. I'll take the nicer one if I can make the weight. I'll take the lighter one if I can't.
Right. And someone who's very clever would be like, wow, but I like to have... Okay, dude. Get an iPass and an Audible subscription and drive to the match. I don't know what to tell you. But by and large, and I'm pretty similar too. Like when I was shooting open predominantly, like yeah, I had 1 bag that would kind of cover most of my bases. I had 1 bipod, and I wouldn't actually bring a tripod. I was kind of just before tripods, or they were just emerging.
Yeah, and
people wanted
tripods
kneeling
are a thing
bipods at the time. That was the thing. Is man, did you bring the kneeling bipod or not?
I've never actually used a kneeling bipod. I take that back. I've used a kneeling bipod once, and I literally never shot it again. I will only bring a tripod if I'm going to a match where tripods are allowed. So in a lot of matches, you can't stage a tripod or ditch a tripod or do whatever. Like, if you can't use it on a stage, I'm not going to bring it. I'm not going to bring a spotting scope, which is something that I'd normally throw in the bag for, zeroing or like hand to an RO for them to borrow for a stage or something like that. Like, if I'm driving to a match, there's going to be multiple tripods, multiple bags, all my bipods, spotting scope, both sets of rangefinder. Like, I just empty the entire gear room into the van of the truck. Flying, one bipod, one tripod, one bag.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, it is not unheard of. Birds of a feather flock together. All right. So it is not unheard of for people to be like, okay, dude, I'm going to bring the radium tripod. You bring the kneeling bipod. You bring all the bags. Like, like everybody kind of knows what each other has. And it's like, okay, we're all going to squad together and we'll have the full kit. Or it'll be like, hey, we're flying and we're squatting with Riser, and it's in the Western U.S.
He's driving.
Like, everything we need is going to be in the Blue Raptor. Like, it's going to be fine.
Yep.
Or you're like, well,
exactly.
I don't have any friends, blah, blah, blah. Okay, squad with a bunch of open people. You can see what division they're in. Guarantee
Go make some friends.
you, like, everything that's on a squad is basically community use. So, like, even if that person is a freaking stranger, as long as you're not on deck before them, be like, hey, man, could I use your tripod? Sure. Like people are more than willing to loan out their gear if somebody has something that you don't have that you need. And I would say that's very common in open division. Just because you're flying to the match doesn't mean everybody's flying to the match. I bet you Jeff Chafin or Adam Reiser are driving to that match, and they'll have what you need. So.
Yeah. If you see me and you see my truck or my van, come on up and ask for whatever you need. It's in the back. Quick little side note: if you are borrowing gear, this is the untold rule is if you break it, you buy it, or more specifically, if you shoot it, you buy it. As a person on the shorter side, I have been responsible for shooting point blank another competitor's PRS bag at a 3-gun match with a shotgun, because there was a staged tripod for shooting the slug target in the back. And when it came my turn, we all forgot that I'm shorter and that needed to be lowered. So when I squared up in this window, height over bore on the Dissident, did not get my muzzle over the top of this thing shooting the plate rack. And I just completely confettied this dude's bag right in front of him. And I walked to the van. This is at a time when I was spending a lot of time in the van, so I happened to have a few $100s cash, and I was like, hey, man, how much was that bag? And he's like, it was $150, and I just handed him $150. I'm like, sorry about your bag, homie. And
my bad.
And then I so he gave me the bag, and I took it into work, and I had the people in our sew lab here put a nice leather patch on it and class it up a bit and filled it back up with beads. So I now use that bag, but it didn't come cheap.
But essentially, that's how you fly with open stuff. You bring what you absolutely need, and you have enough weight to do it. Or, I mean, depending on how bad you want some of that stuff, just slap down the $200 and make the Delta people lift it. There's that option too. But it's really, people think it's super hard, but it's actually not. I wouldn't say it's any easier or less hard to fly with open stuff than it is any of the other divisions for 3.
Yeah, other than just making weight with a couple extra accessories, like I would still bring a bipod when I shot tack, because I still want to get a good zero on my rifle. Like, honestly, the tripod is the only addition to the open kit, other than the fact that the shotgun weighs a little bit more and has a couple magazines. But I actually kind of find it easier to fly with open gear just because the shotgun fits in the case without disassembling it.
Yeah.
Like, taking apart tube guns is super annoying. Oh, little pro tip. If you are flying with a tube gun, you have to take that spring out of the tube. I don't trust the spring to not get crushed and lose shape. So what I actually did for that the Texas match was I got a 1/2-inch ID PVC pipe with 2 caps on it, and I cut it the length that would fit inside my gun case. So when it came time to fly, I could just unscrew the end of my magazine tube of my shotgun, slide the spring out, slide it into that PVC tube, cap it, and throw it in the case, and not worry about anything bad happening to my spring while it was packed.
I do similar. I roll it up into a coil, and then I put it in a hard-sided Tupperware.
Yep. yeah, do something with your spring. Showing up with a busted mag spring would super suck. But yeah, it's not as bad as people think. And then like the actual just flying with guns in general, it's like you roll up to the counter and you're like, I need to declare a firearm. And they're like, cool, sign this thing and slip it in there. And you slide it in, you close it, you lock it, you hand them the case. Some airports would be like, hey, go wait by that post over there. If 10 minutes goes by and we haven't called your name, you're good. And if we call your name, like we might need to get in there and look at something. Some places are like, you're good to go. If we have issues, we'll call you at the gate that you're at. They'll usually have like the way that they do it there. Some airports are better than others, but it's really not that big a deal. People make way big of a deal out of it.
It's not. Like I say, I fly all the time. I'm always flying with guns, at least a carry gun. And I have not had a real problem in several years. And even the problems I have, I did a best ofs on my YouTube, best ofs TSA.
It's worth it. Go watch it.
Yeah. So that collection of things is the worst stuff that ever happened to me, and it's really not that bad. Here, the quick and dirty though on it is, when the primary encounter that you're gonna have when you check in, all right, that's the time you got to be on your A game. First of all, you got to understand this person is not paid enough to care about you, what you're doing, or where you're going. All right, you are one of hundreds of people they're going to talk to this day, and they're a person just like anybody else having a day trying to get to whatever the end of their shift is. All right, so my rule of
you know what? I disagree because this just happened to me at the Dissident match. I grabbed my rental car and the guy's like, "Oh, what are you in Texas for?" And it's like shotgun competition. And he stopped what he was doing and started asking me very pointed questions to the point where I was like, "Hey man, I gotta go. Can we go back to the check-in?" He's like, "Oh yeah, my bad." Yeah. And so
okay,
I was like, did not expect that response, but yeah. Usually you don't get that response.
You don't get that. So like for those who have seen the Ocean 11 movie, all right, when Brad Pitt is coaching Matt Damon on how to do the little sly thing, it's like you want to be likably forgettable, okay? You want this person to like you and forget you the second that you leave their sight. That is how I try to conduct myself. So walk up there, even if you've never done this before, act like you have. Use the term, "I would like to declare firearms," and then they're going to produce a card. This card is really a declaration that your gun is unloaded, and you basically sign it and throw it in your case. I avoid really giving them any access to the case. So like even if they're like, "I need to look at it," this is part of the reason we do the soft case inside of the hard case, because sometimes they're like, "Oh, let's have a look inside here." I open it up and it's like box inside a box, and they're like, "Oh, well, that's not fun." And again, I try to do this as quickly as possible. Like I open it up, give them a little glimpse, throw that thing in there, and shut it again without permission, and lock it up again. And most of them will accept that. Sometimes they'll be like, "Well, I need to see that it's unloaded." Never touch a gun in an airport, like ever.
Yeah.
But sometimes they will like, "I need to see," Dudley Do Right will be like, "I need to see my favorite of all time, number one, Josh Tarrant, in I think is Cincinnati or wherever he was from." He opens it up and she's like, "I need to see it's unloaded." And he's like, "Okay." And she's like, "You have to show me." And he's like, okay. So he takes the scope. He has the bikini scope caps on his 1-6. He takes the cap off the objective lens and like looks at her and like, "Yeah?" And she's like, "Good." And he's like, "Okay."
Yes.
He also was good for statute of limitations is up on this, I think. He also was good for his case was way overweight. But he knew at this particular airport he could slap that thing down on the scale and he could prop his foot up underneath it and he would hold it. He would hold it at 49.5 pounds until they put a tag on it.
Solid.
But
yeah, well, I think that's about it. You got any last little tidbits to add, or I think we've covered this in a pretty excruciating detail.
That's it, man. Like I said, I do it all the time. Usually have enough weight that can fly back with whatever ammo I don't shoot at the match. That's another reason not to send bulk pack ammo to a match, because then how do you get it home? Usually I'll be loading all of my magazines and hope I have enough OEM boxes to get it all home. But yeah, that's really
I ship my stuff. I ship my stuff out in the OEM boxes, and then I can use it to fly back. So I don't ship bulk pack style. I make sure that however I ship it out there, I want to be able to put that in my check bag on the way back.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, if you have any other questions, you can hit either one of us up on any social media platforms. I am Adam Reiser everywhere. He is 3Gun AMAX pretty much everywhere. On the Perf Podcast at gmail.com if you want to email us something long and rambly that doesn't fit in an Instagram post. And if we get to 5,000 views on one of these podcasts, then we'll tell the story about Adam almost going to prison. The shorter of the two Adams. So yeah, share it up, and I'll tell you about when things go really, really bad, when you accidentally walk through a metal detector with some stuff that you're super duper not supposed to have. And that's it. Keep those overlays handy. This is On the Perf. We'll see you out there.
Bye-bye, everyone.